Rain lashed against the cottage windows, turning the world outside into a blurred grey smear. The storm hammered the glass, but inside, the hearth fire crackled with steady, rhythmic heat. Orange light danced across the floorboards, stretching shadows that flickered and swayed. Milo lay curled on the rug, a small bundle of fur tucked tight against his own warmth. His whiskers twitched in the deep, heavy sleep. The only sound competing with the downpour was the grandfather clock in the corner. It ticked with a heavy, metallic precision. Each swing of the pendulum anchored the silence, creating a predictable, safe loop of time. The air smelled of wood smoke and dry earth. Milo shifted, his paws kneading the rug in his dreams. Everything in the cottage was still. The house held its breath, waiting for the night to turn. The rhythm broke. The grandfather clock skipped a beat, a metallic stutter that echoed sharply in the room. Then, silence. Not the comfortable quiet of before, but a hollow, expectant void. From behind the wainscoting, a new sound emerged. It was a sharp, frantic scratching, like tiny claws dragging against dry wood. Milo bolted upright, his fur standing on end. His ears swiveled, locking onto the wall as the sound skittered along the baseboard. He did not meow. He did not hesitate. He rose, his paws making no sound on the hardwood as he crept toward the noise. The scratching moved, tracing the perimeter of the room before stopping abruptly at the bookshelf. Milo froze. He pressed his nose to the wood, his whiskers vibrating with the intensity of the vibration coming from within. He stood perfectly still, his muscles coiled, waiting for the next move, his eyes wide and unblinking in the dim firelight. Milo hooked a single claw into the spine of the heavy, leather-bound volume. He pulled. His weight shifted, back legs braced against the floor, muscles bunching under his fur. The book resisted, then slid forward with a dry, rasping sound. Behind it, the entire shelf groaned. It was a deep, tectonic protest of wood against wood. With a final, shuddering creak, the heavy unit swung inward, pivoting on hidden hinges to reveal a jagged seam in the wallpaper. A draft of air hit him instantly. It was not the damp, cold air of the storm outside, but something stale and unnaturally chilled. Yet, beneath the chill, a scent drifted through the gap, warm milk, rich and cloying, cutting through the smell of old paper and dust. Milo hesitated. His ears flattened, then flicked forward. He pressed his face into the opening, his whiskers brushing the rough, exposed stone of the wall. The corridor beyond was narrow, a sliver of darkness that seemed to swallow the orange light from the hearth. He took one step, then another, his paws sinking into a fine layer of grey grit. The smell of the milk grew stronger, pulling him deeper into the throat of the house. He squeezed his body through the gap, his tail vanishing into the shadows as the bookshelf clicked shut behind him, sealing the cottage away. The corridor was a throat of cold stone, barely wide enough for his frame. Shadows clung to the walls, stretching thin and jagged as he moved. Every step he took was muffled by the thick, stagnant air. He kept his belly low to the ground, his eyes darting between the flickering candle flames. The scent of warm milk was now heavy, coating his tongue with every breath. He reached a bend in the path and stopped. The silence here was absolute, a heavy weight pressing against his ears. Then, A sound cut through the stillness. It was a voice, thin as paper, brittle and dry. Milo. The name hung in the air, vibrating against the stone. He spun around, his claws unsheathed, digging into the grit of the floor. There was no one in the corridor, only the shifting shadows. He took a cautious step forward, his heart hammering against his ribs. Ahead, the passage opened into a small circular space. In the center stood a table, its surface obscured by the gloom. Suddenly, the silence shattered. A chair opposite the table dragged across the stone floor with a sharp, piercing screech. Milo flattened his ears, his tail puffing to twice its size. Milo stared at the empty chair. The bowl of cream sat on the table, steam rising in thin, ghostly ribbons that caught the flickering candlelight. He took a tentative step toward the table, his muscles coiled and ready to spring. Then, without a sound, the candles snuffed out. The light vanished instantly, leaving him in a void of absolute blackness. He blinked, but the dark was thick, pressing against his eyes like a physical weight. He lowered his head, his whiskers twitching as he tried to map the space by sound alone. The air grew heavy, stagnant, and cold. A low, rhythmic growl began to vibrate through the floorboards, traveling up through his pads and into his bones. It was not a single sound, but a chorus of hungry, jagged noises that seemed to emerge from every corner of the room. Milo felt the hair along his spine stand rigid. He crouched, his belly pressing against the hard stone, his claws digging deep into the floor to anchor himself. He did not move. He did not breathe. The growls intensified, shifting from a low rumble to a sharp, aggressive snarl that echoed off the unseen walls. He was trapped in the center of the dark. Milo tensed, his muscles locked for a fight he could not win. He prepared for the impact of teeth or claws, but the attack never came. Instead, the aggressive snarls began to fray at the edges. The low, guttural vibration in the floorboards thinned, losing its menace. It dissolved into a chorus of high-pitched, thin mews that sounded like wind whistling through a crack in a door. The sound was not predatory. It was hollow, desperate, and small. A single sliver of moonlight broke through a high, unseen aperture, cutting a sharp path through the absolute blackness. It landed on the floor, illuminating a patch of cold stone. One by one, the shadows coalesced into form. A small, translucent kitten stepped into the light, its fur shimmering like mist. It was followed by another, and then a dozen more. They were pale, flickering shapes with wide, hollow eyes that reflected nothing. They did not move with the grace of hunters. They huddled together, their small bodies trembling. Milo watched as they pressed against each other, seeking a warmth they could not generate themselves. The hunger in their mews was not a threat. It was a plea. He looked at their shivering forms, their translucent paws barely touching the stone, and the fear that had gripped his chest loosened, replaced by a sharp, sudden ache of recognition. Milo looked from the bowl of cream to the shivering circle of ghosts. The steam continued to rise, a fragrant, warm ribbon in the cold air. He took a slow, deliberate step forward. The spectral kittens flinched, their translucent forms flickering like dying embers. Milo did not stop. He reached the table leg and nudged the heavy ceramic bowl with his nose. It slid across the wood with a soft scrape, coming to rest right before the smallest spirit. The ghost hesitated, then dipped its head. As its tongue touched the cream, a spark of color surged through its pale frame. The mist-like fur turned solid, glowing with a rich, warm gold. One by one, the others swarmed the bowl. They lapped at the liquid, their hollow eyes filling with life, their bodies losing their transparency as they fed. The room seemed to brighten, the oppressive weight of the dark lifting, as the spirits became tangible, vibrant creatures. Milo stood back, his tail twitching as he watched the transformation. The silence of the room was suddenly broken by a deep, resonant sound. "They have been waiting for a guardian," the voice echoed. Milo felt the floor settle. The air in the corridor shivered, and the solid stone wall behind the table began to ripple like water. It thinned, then vanished entirely, revealing a vast, hidden space that defied the dimensions of the cottage. The floor was no longer cold rock, but a sprawling landscape of deep velvet pillows and mounds of soft, tangled yarn. The spectral kittens, now vibrant and solid, bounded into the room, their paws sinking into the plush fabric. They tumbled over one another, chasing the ends of yarn that unspooled across the floor. Milo followed, his paws finding purchase in the thick, yielding surface. He walked to the center of the room, where the kittens had already begun to form a tight, rhythmic pile. They were still flickering slightly, their forms needing the anchor of his living heat to remain fully present. Milo stepped into the center of the heap, feeling the immediate, intense cold radiating from their bodies. He curled his frame tightly against them, tucking his nose into the soft fur of the nearest kitten. He began to purr, a steady, low vibration that rippled through the pile. The ghosts mimicked his rhythm, their purrs swelling until the sound filled the cavernous space. When Milo finally stepped back through the seam in the wallpaper, the cottage was exactly as he had left it. The grandfather clock on the wall resumed its steady, mechanical pace, the pendulum swinging with a rhythmic click that filled the room. He shook his fur, the phantom chill of the sanctuary fading as he curled up on the rug by the hearth. To any observer, he was merely a cat waking from a long nap. Yet, the house held a secret. Now, whenever heavy rain lashes against the glass, Milo slips behind the bookshelf. He disappears into the wood, drawn by the silent call of the feast that never truly ends. The cottage remains a place of quiet, but the walls have developed a memory. Guests who stay for the evening often stop mid-sentence, their heads tilting toward the wainscoting. They hear a distinct, rhythmic knock, not from the outside, not from the wind, but from deep within the structure itself. They never suspect the truth. They do not know that behind the leather-bound books, a dozen spectral kittens are waiting. The house is not haunted by sorrow, but by a secret purring hunger that waits for the right person.